Whoa, we are back with some Bleach Soul Resonance, and we've got Kakutvd here, who is a French creator for Bleach Soul Resonance, someone who I see very often in this space, either just talking about something, talking about leaks, talking about this or that, and they say, Bleach Soul Resonance, there's a good chance that over time, long-term data mining will end up destroying the game. Major issues caused by data mining are seriously weakening the relationship between Shueisha and Newverse. So, this is a bit of a nightmare situation if it is true, which we don't have any reason to believe it is not true, but if it is true, it's a bit of a nightmare situation because by all accounts, Bleach Soul Resonance is doing well. Bleach Soul Resonance is actually seems to be exceeding its projections and making itself profitable. You can talk about like the lack of marketing, lack of this, lack of that, but the game is working. It's fundamentally working. It is extremely free to play, and it is working. The issue with IP Gacha, though, is that they do always bend the knee somewhere along the line, right? We can see this in multiple examples with like the release dates getting pushed back. And let me actually switch over to that tweet really quickly so we can talk about that as well. Okay, here we are. So, based on internal source, the official account that leaked information will likely be shut down after the February 3rd livestream. This video is being recorded on the 31st, by the way. So, in 3 days for me. And its content may be wiped. Officially, Saber can only appear in the future through live streams. Grimmjow was originally planned, but IP restrictions prevented a dual form version, so the character was scrapped and remade. This is pretty staggering because the characters in Bleach Soul Resonance, you know, it's obviously a mobile game, so there are limitations in like how extremely unique, you know, everything can be, and there are some sort of patterns that overlap. There are always going to be patterns that overlap because the characters exist within the battle system. But in the same way that like Epic 7 or HSR or Genshin or, you know, Zenless Zone Zero or, you know, Dokkan Battle, Dragon Ball Legends, etc., all those games still fit into their binaries. Bleach Soul Resonance characters are, one, really good looking, and two, the actual care that's put into animating these things, to assigning windows where you can do animation cancels, all these different, you know, little bits and bobs. I imagine it's really heartbreaking whenever they have to remake a character like this, and it ends up costing a lot of development time. I don't know how big the development team is or whatever, but these characters have looked really good every single time they've come out with one, even down to characters like Yududu or something, like the SRs. Like, so that's got to be pretty heartbreaking. It was confirmed as a DPS, but will likely return later as a single form character. The next character will be an after sales support character from another series unrelated to combat or DPS. I'm not sure what this means, but yeah, the people are misunderstanding and thinking that like the game will shut down after the February 3rd live stream. That is not what is being said. What is being said is that there is a leaker who will be gotten. So let's talk about, I guess, like, you know, just leak culture, I guess, for a little bit briefly. Is this leak culture typically comes in response to a lack of information on the side of the development team. Whatever is happening with Newverse and by proxy Crunchyroll, it's both unfortunate and frustrating because Bleach Soul Resonance obviously has all of the pieces. It just needs this last little step. It needs people in front of the camera. It needs a Tani like from, you know, Dragon Ball Legends, a Toshi like from Gekishin Squadra, an Omatsu like from Dokkan Battle. It needs someone who wants to get in front of this camera and say, hey, here's what we have coming. Here's what we have coming down the hopper. If we had official sources, then people would feel less inclined to data mine, to leak, to promote those leaks, because we would just have a steady build up to hype. Now, I will say that outside of Epic 7, I've never really been on the ground floor of one of these games for years and years. I came into Dokkan after year 7 during year 8. I was there for Epic 7 the whole time, and that game had a pretty wishy-washy sort of place with its marketing. It was both pushing, but also wasn't bound by IP law, right? In the case of Bleach Soul Resonance, a lot of the frustration is heaped onto the Bleach Soul Resonance team, when in reality, a lot of this probably has to do more with the internal affairs, right? It is unfortunate, and it can be frustrating, but it's why I have sort of a laissez-faire, you know, response to a lot of the missteps and stuff from the Bleach Soul Resonance team, because I just don't really get the mindset that people have where they think that the companies that are doing everything right that they can do don't want to make money. You know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense that they just don't want to hire marketing. I imagine maybe they're not getting budget for marketing. Maybe they're not getting a window for marketing because they're just saying, no, you actually can't reveal this until like 2 days prior. 3 days prior, etc. You can't do this and that. You can't confirm anything. Maybe that's why they're not doing big builds ups. Like, with everything we know, and every time people are like, oh my god, the marketing, remember that characters are being switched like a week prior. It seems like sometimes, like it feels like characters are being scrapped, remade, and moved based on IP law, like within very short windows, which means how do you expect Newverse to actually plot out a reveal when they're not even allowed to operate with this level, like with some freedom, right? I think a lot of the problems that Bleach Soul Resonance have, and why it's so like sad to see, is because the developer side seems to be on their P's and Q's. It's the Shueisha side that seems to be fucking around, if we're being like so for real right now, right? Like, Shueisha seems to be the one on bullshit. It doesn't really seem to be Bleach Soul Resonance's problem. And we see this a lot of times with Dragon Ball. We see this a lot of times with, Dokkan Battle. Games not being able to use manga accurate things. Yada, yada, yada. So yeah, it is sad to see that, there is this side of brick wall for Bleach Soul Resonance, because I feel like they're doing everything right personally. But I know some people just see it as like, oh, Bleach Soul Resonance getting hit by IP law, that's just the dev's fault. It's like, I guess that it sucks though. But let's move over to the Reddit portion of this. All right, so here we are again, weekly mega thread. Just gonna take a look at what people have put in here so far. So this person says, skip Gin, so I have an Ikkaku, Rangiku, Tosen team, trying to juice as much as I can from Byakuya in Frenzy. Till now, I'm still not fully sure of the best rotation in the game, or in this team. Going Tosen in lead to counter, then technique, Rangiku technique Ikkaku, Rangiku ult tech whenever possible, Tosen battlefield ult tech, mash impossible, then Ikkaku on ult to clear out. Is there anything they're missing? And the answer, put quite frankly, is kind of no. This is something I talk about. Whoa, one sec. There we are. This is something I talk about quite a bit when it comes to the it just becomes an issue of rotations and what the character is capable of. It's not that Ikkaku is just like some usable like loser character, right? That said, when a character like this is, in the standard pool, when it's a standard banner character, you sort of have the expectation that you'll have multiple of them. I think that is the expectation for people like Ikkaku, like Komamura, like Yoruichi, etc., etc. You are going to have multiple of this character so long as you pull on the standard banner, right? Because they're available, because their resources more available, because the character is essentially free when the game launches, they felt no need to make him sort of exceptional. And I think that when it comes to Ikkaku, then you're just going to be sort of hamstrung by how his abilities innately work. Big animations, the windows don't feel as fluid as someone like Gin, especially. Trying to compare Gin's windows with Ikkaku's, I mean, you're just dealing with a character who essentially has no time on field while also doing all of his damage. Like, there are no windows where Gin isn't contributing to the fight, whereas Ikkaku, by nature of being the character that he is always demanding that you be attacking with him. And that's just unfortunate. Similarly, a character like Kenpachi, who seemed very greedy, actually has a lot of windows where you could switch out with him still using his attack, still blasting away at the enemies without like sort of needing to take the fire. And that is just one of those things that is relevant to like the newer characters, right? You see this with, Sosuke, Aizen, and Toshihiro Hitsugaya. Hitsugaya being a character who is pretty greedy with time on field. He wants to spend a lot of time attacking. He wants to spend a lot of time in his ult attacking. He wants to spend, you know, several seconds using his enhanced technique and things like that. So it just becomes an issue of who the character actually is. And I think in that case, you know, Ikkaku just has some glaring issues. Is there a specific order to use Tosen when it comes to his Bankai? Every time I pop his Bankai, I go from left to right. So battlefield skill, technique, and then ultimate to finish it off. Is that how it's supposed to be, or is there a more efficient way to do this? I don't think it matters so long as you get all of them off. However, I will say that the battlefield skill when he's in his ultimate pops the bleed on the character, right? If I'm not mistaken. So like he comes in, he pops, and if they're wounded, it clears, it hits the, yeah, it triggers the wounds. So what I've typically taken to doing, and you should have this obviously just through time, it's not this one, it's his weapon, through time, right? After releasing the ultimate button becomes a follow-up attack. So I've taken to just using ultimate, popping this, using technique, which again, when you're in the ultimate, applies a ton of bonus hits, applying a bunch of wound, and then I typically battlefield skill once I'm in the actual ultimate, and it pops these stacks. I think that has been my rotation. Left to right hasn't felt quite like it, but if anyone else is more of a Tosen head, you can, you know, hit us up with the information in the comments. Please make generic questions appear here only, like should I pull or how to build. There's a lot of videos. I don't think you know, generic questions need to be here. I think you should just, like, you know, a lot of YouTubers, me, Ikkaku, you know, Kaku, whoever, you know, Rokage, I believe, is still covering the game. Like, there's some people who can, you know, still like deal in that. So let's check out this guide here. Oh, okay, I see. It looks like their thing is just broken. Yeah, level 22, but it says player level 18. I remember this happening. I don't remember if you guys, like, if anyone was here since the beginning of this, like, Bleach Soul Resonance, you know, appearance on this channel, but this was happening to me once upon a time, right? Like, I did have a similar problem where I was having a wall sort of put in place by level, but I was past that level. It took essentially like a day, like the refresh fixed it. But yeah, very odd. Let's see. Is it worth it to upgrade the SR characters, especially for the SS support? Do we need to wait for the SSR support? This person essentially answers it properly, which is Momo, Rangiku, and Yachido are pretty fine. The only issue with Yachido that I find is that unless you're going to move Yudahara off to someone, like, if you're going to move Yudahara to a different team, I guess it's fine, because Yudahara ultimately is the, like, most desired character in the entire game outside of Aizen. Then Yachido could be fine to raise, but yeah, there's no one else here that is, like, super necessary. I think that Nemu can be fine if you have, again, like, a strict rotation of teams you want to build out and you just need the bonus strike character. But again, there's just, I don't know, there's this character feels like she demands a little bit more than the other supports. I should upgrade Momo. Is it fine if she and her weapon is around level 670? Yeah, by the way, don't upgrade a bunch of supports past, like, where you're comfortable with your resources, especially if you're free to play. Your supports do not need to be level 100. They do not need that, like, they do not need to be level 90 or 80. Your supports can be pretty paltry so long as they're getting their supporting skills off. Obviously, there are skill upgrades tied to level, but unless you have an excess of resources, you do not need to spend those resources when you could just be raising your DPS. If all of your DPSs are done, if all of your DPSs have everything they need, you can then start slowly upgrading your supports as a free-to-play player. So, scheme under hat. How exactly does this Byakuya 4 work? The up to 25,000 base attack throws me off. I feel like I understand the rest, but that part kind of confused me since I've yet to see the damage that would be remotely close to that value. Yeah, it's just this. It can't exceed 25,000. Yeah. Storage. Yeah. So when they're in this circle, they're going to be getting hit they're going to be getting hit by your DPSs, and they're going to ultimately take way more damage than the circle can possibly store. So you're not going to see a big explosion, but you're going to see like a chunk get removed from this. It's not, it's a little, the translation's a little wonky. Missed out on Tosh, but I have B0 Aizen and B4 Kisuke. I have a Thresh team that consists of B2 Gin, Tosen, and Angiku, which is pretty solid for me right now and frees up my Kisuke for my Aizen team. Yep. What character do you think would work best to fill in that last spot? Yeet? Especially because he's only... Yeah. You would want to wait for another DPS, because Aizen, once he's got boundaries in him, can essentially become your main DPS. But I will also say, unless you have unless you have a Toshido really built up, it's not really that crazy either. Like, Aizen ends up doing the most of the damage anyway, so you could argue that just putting in Yududu is fine. Like, I don't know. It's a tough spot to be in, because obviously you need dupes to really make him a DPS, but I'm not gonna lie, just putting in a support of any kind and like having it double support like Momo is perfectly fine. But it does say I missed out on Tosh, so I mean, still have him. Pretty new to the game and have some questions. Right now my standard characters are Yoruichi and Kisuke. My first limited will be Kenpachi. When I get to the standard pools, should I get Byakuya for Kenpachi or Sajin for Yoruichi? If Byaku, who I can use instead of him in the meantime, which standard stamp weapon should I going for first? Is it better to fully invest in one team at a time, or early or on can you invest in two teams? I would just build your teams out one by one. Try not to bog yourself down. You can build multiple teams, like, if so long as you're getting the DPSs up, and you can really let the support slack behind, because the DPSs are going to do so much for the teams just sort of indefinitely. Like, they're going to be the things that really push your account forward without needing that extra bit of insurance. If I have multiple dupes of an SR weapon stamp, is it better to ascend one of them or keep just in case? I just ascend them personally, but I would get, I mean, Yoruichi. Right now my syndicates are Yuri and Kiche. My limited will be Kenpachi. When I get to standard station, I get Byakuya for Kenpachi or Sajin. Get Byakuya if you happen to see this. Get Byakuya, because Sajin, while he is good, I don't think he does more than Byakuya does on any given team. And Komamura, I feel like, he's right there on the outs of kind of going out. Like, I would just focus on your limited character Kenpachi, your Byakuya and your Kisuke, get them built up, get them done, get that team finalized with like weapons, core stamps, etc. And then by that time, maybe Mayuri's out, maybe Soifun's out, maybe you've already got Komamura because now you're dealing with more content, so you're able to clear and get more stamps. But that's just me. Should I work on building on Byakuya? He's level 30 up for my side team. Focus on farming relics for Kenpachi. Just play soda runs right now. Has Kisase. He's part of my Aizen team. I would say build Kenpachi. He's going to make the most stamina because of this weird build. Yeah, I also, again, this just goes back to the DPS will always outshine any sort of supporting cast initially. So the reason we prioritize supports is because the supports are useful sort of like in a nebulous sense. They're useful everywhere. They help fill out the later stages when you're doing mono content. The DPSs, though, need to be prioritized once you decide on one. Once you decide on a DPS, you need to just build the DPS until it's done. Whereas your supports can slack behind because they're just still going to be providing, you know, the actual supportive benefits. They're just not going to be as strong as the, like, you know, the higher leveled supports, right? So a Byakuya who's level 30 is still giving you his tactics bonus for the team. We really have Kenny already. Is it worth pulling for him if I don't have Bichigo, or should I wait for a Bichigo rerun? I think Kenpachi is really fun and he seems fine. I know there's a little bit of hubbub about his power level, but I think he feels fine. I think he will also be buffed if people continue to talk like this. So, you know, I'll take it. Like, eventually, a lot of characters have been buffed patch to patch, and I do expect Kenpachi to receive that if people really do feel negatively about him. Is B0 Aizen with weapon and soul stamps viable enough to run with two buffers, Momo and Kisuke, or should I pull and use Kenpachi with Kisei and Yarachiro? No, B0, yeah, he won't work as a DPS with two supports. And there you could pull Kenpachi, use him with Aizen, or wait for another. I would also agree with this. Aizen, here's the thing. Aizen will work as a DPS by himself at B0 for the softer content, things like the Spirit Tower up until the new floors. The new floors he will not, and for getting you through early game sort of leaderboard stuff like the Frenzy Feast or challenge fights. But he will fall off, obviously. He will fall off. That said, it really does become one of those things where if you don't have something good to fill in for him, then you might as well just tank that. Like, you could just tank him being a little worse then. Because when I do spirit fights in Frenzy Feast, Toshido doesn't really do anything. It really is just Aizen. Like, Aizen rotating on and off. So, that's just me. But let's wrap it up there. It's gone on for a while. We got some pretty good answers out of the way. Again, thanks for the weekly questions mega thread for existing essentially. Thanks, Comprehensive Toe 6379 for putting this together. Thank you, mod team over at the Bleach Soul Resonance Reddit. And yeah, hope you like this video. Hope you got some answers. Like if you like the video, subscribe to the club. We all go make it, and peace.